take a deep breath. Like right now, wherever you are, just drop your shoulders a bit.
Yeah, just settle in.
Exactly. Now, I want you to say this phrase out loud, or, at least clearly in your mind. Say, being loved is safe.
Just notice what just happened there.
Right. Did your stomach just drop? Did your throat suddenly tighten up? Or, did your brain instantly throw up this wall of cynicism? Or maybe a wave of subtle panic just washed over your chest?
It's a really profound contradiction, isn't it?
It really is. Today, we are looking at why your biological hardware is actively, secretly rejecting the very things you want most in this world. We all claim we want to be loved, we want to be successful, we want peace.
But then the moment those things actually approach us, our internal systems just sound a blaring alarm.
And that is exactly what we're exploring today. Welcome to this deep dive. It's fascinating how much time and energy we spend upgrading our external technology. When a new smartphone drops, we obsess over the faster processor.
Oh, absolutely. We line up for it.
Right. We sit patiently while our laptops install these massive new operating systems because we understand that old software creates glitches. Like old software drains the battery and inevitably crashes.
But when it comes to the most complex, sophisticated piece of technology in the known universe, which is the biological computer sitting right inside your own skull, we rarely run a diagnostic check.
We just let it run. We never look at the operating system humming quietly behind the scenes. So today is your masterclass on how to rewrite your own source code.
And it is so needed.
It really is. We are pulling together some incredible research, somatic frameworks, and psychological blueprints to discover the hidden software codes that dictate the trajectory of your life. So if you have ever felt stuck in a rut, unable to break a bad habit, or inexplicably distant in your relationships, this is for you. We are handing the floor over to unpack the true nature of this biological computer.
Well, thank you. And to really grasp this, we have to start by understanding the difference between the hardware and the software.
Right, the physical versus the mental.
Exactly. Let's start with the physical vessel. Think about your brain for a second. It is essentially a 3-pound mass of wet tissue, utilizing roughly 86 billion neurons.
86 billion, that's just wild to think about.
It's staggering. And that physical mass, along with your nervous system, your organs, your limbs, that is the hardware. It is an absolute marvel of evolutionary engineering. It's the monitor, the keyboard, the intricate wiring humming with electrical impulses.
But hardware, no matter how advanced, it can't do anything without instructions, right? Like a supercomputer without an operating system is really just a very expensive paperweight.
Precisely. The software dictates everything. And in this metaphor, your mind is the software. The fundamental zeros and ones of your mental software are not digital code. They are constructed from your core beliefs.
So things we assume to be true.
Yes. These are the foundational assumptions you hold about the world, about other people, and, most importantly, about your own identity.
Here's where it gets a little uncomfortable, though, because if I look at my laptop, I know exactly what software I installed. I chose those programs. But when it comes to our minds, did we actually write our own code?
And that is the staggering reality we have to confront here. The vast majority of your foundational codes were written, installed, and executed completely without your permission.
Wait, really? Without our permission?
Completely. You did not consciously choose them. They were downloaded into your system during a highly critical window of development, primarily between the moment you were born and your 3rd birthday.
Hold on, let me get this straight. You're saying the software running my life right now, as an adult dictating how I handle a stressful meeting or how I react to my partner, was programmed when I was wearing diapers and couldn't even speak.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
How does that actually work biologically?
Well, it comes down to brainwave states and neurological development. When an infant is born, their brain is not fully formed. In fact, human babies are born incredibly premature compared to other mammals.
Oh, right. Specifically so their massive heads can pass through the birth canal.
Yes, exactly. And because the brain is still developing outside the womb, it is highly malleable. During those first 36 months, a child's brain operates primarily in delta and theta brainwave frequencies.
And what do those frequencies mean, practically speaking?
Well, they're the frequencies of a hypnotic trance. In an adult, you only really experience deep delta and theta states when you are in deep sleep or, deep meditation. But for a toddler, that is their waking reality.
They're just walking around hypnotized.
Pretty much. Because they do not have an active prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain responsible for logic, reasoning, critical thinking. You can think of it as the bouncer at the door of the club, deciding which information gets in and which gets rejected.
So an infant basically has no bouncer.
Exactly. The doors to the subconscious are wide open. They cannot rationalize. They can't look at a highly stressed, exhausted mother and think, oh, mom is just having a hard day because of financial pressures that has nothing to do with me.
Right, they don't have the context for that.
They have zero context. Instead, they absorb the emotional environment entirely.
Let's visualize that for a second. So a baby is crying. They look up at their primary caregiver. What is actually happening in the circuitry right in that moment?
When a baby looks up into the eyes of their caregiver, they're looking into a biological mirror. We have these specialized cells called mirror neurons.
Oh, I've heard of those.
Yeah, they're fascinating. They fire both when we act and when we observe the same action performed by another. So through the caregiver's microexpressions, the dilation of their pupils, the tension in their jaw, the gentleness of their touch, the pitch of their voice, the infant's nervous system receives a massive data download.
And what is the data actually saying to them?
If the caregiver is attuned and present, the infant's brain receives a wash of oxytocin and serotonin. The nervous system registers safety. The baseline code is written, I am safe. I am inherently worthy of attention. The world is a secure place to explore.
That sounds like an amazing operating system to start with.
It's the ideal one. And this heavily myelinates the neural pathways associated with trust and calm.
Myelination being the insulation around the nerve fibers that makes the signals travel faster, right? Like kind of like upgrading from dial-up internet to fiber optics.
Spot on. The more a pathway is fired, the more it is myelinated. But we have to look at what happens if there is a disruption. What if the caregiver is emotionally absent, chronically stressed, battling depression, or just simply dismissive?
The infant isn't getting that oxytocin hit then. They are probably getting a spike in cortisol, the stress hormone.
Exactly. The infant feels the disconnection immediately. But remember, they have no logic to process it. To an infant, the caregiver is God. The caregiver is life itself.
Because without them, they wouldn't survive.
Right. So if there's a problem with the connection, the infant's primitive survival mechanism dictates that the flaw cannot be in the caregiver. Because if the caregiver is flawed, the infant will die.
Oh, wow.
Therefore, the flaw must be within the infant.
That is heartbreaking. So to survive the terror of an unstable environment, the baby just internalizes the blame.
That is exactly how the corrupted file is created. The developing brain internalizes the disconnection as a fundamental truth about its own value.
So what does that bad code look like?
The corrupted code is written as, I am not worthy of good things. I am a burden. Love is conditional and scarce. And this sinks to the very bottom of the operating system, right into the subconscious motherboard.
Just locked in there.
Yes, it becomes a deeply myelinated, lightning-fast neural highway. And it operates silently in the background for decades.
That is terrifying. You grow up, you graduate, you get a job, you enter into serious relationships, all while this invisible string of zeros and ones dictates what you fundamentally believe you deserve. I mean, if we stop right here, this sounds like a tragedy of predetermined fate.
It really does.
It sounds like if you had a rough first 3 years, your software is just bricked and you are doomed.
It would be a tragedy if the brain were made of rigid silicon. But the brain is living, breathing tissue. And this brings us to one of the most optimistic and scientifically verified realities of human biology, which is neuroplasticity.
Okay, let's unpack neuroplasticity because it's a buzzword that gets thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean for someone listening who realizes, like, oh man, I definitely have corrupted code running my life?
Well, neuroplasticity is the brain's physical ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout your entire life. For a long time, the scientific consensus was that once you reached a certain age, your brain was static.
Right, like you're stuck with what you've got.
Yeah, you had the neurons you had, the pathways were set in stone, and it was just a slow decline from there. But modern neuroscience has completely shattered that myth.
So the software isn't permanent at all.
It is highly malleable. We know about neurogenesis, the actual creation of new neurons, particularly in the hippocampus, and we know about synaptic pruning. There is a famous axiom in neuroscience. Neurons that fire together wire together.
I love that phrase.
It's very catchy. But the inverse is also true. Neurons that fail to sync fail to link.
Ah, use it or lose it.
Exactly. If you stop running the corrupted code, if you identify it, isolate it, and actively choose a different response, the physical neural pathway that carries that negative belief begins to weaken.
It just atrophies.
Yes, The brain literally prunes away the synaptic connections because they are no longer being utilized. Meanwhile, as you consciously practice a new, healthier belief, you build and myelinate a brand new neural highway.
This means that just because a negative code was installed in your mind 30 or 40 years ago by circumstances entirely out of your control, you are not a prisoner. You actually hold the administrative rights to your own system.
With intention and rigorous discipline, you can rewrite the software. So let's look at how these codes actually manifest in daily life. Let's start by navigating to the sector of the hard drive that dictates your wealth, your career, and your success.
This is huge. I know so many incredibly talented, brilliant people who are constantly hitting an invisible ceiling in their careers, or they are, perpetually broke despite working all the time. What does our software have to do with achievement?
Oh, it has everything to do with it. For a massive portion of the population, there is a deeply ingrained, highly restrictive code operating around the concept of work and money. We can call it the illusion of hard work.
Okay, what does that code sound like?
It sounds something like this. Money is exceptionally hard to make. Life is a relentless uphill struggle. True success requires grueling, miserable suffering.
Oh man, and society reinforces this constantly. We glorify the grind culture. We tell people that if they aren't bleeding for their paycheck, they haven't earned it. But how does this belief actually sabotage us neurologically?
Through a biological mechanism called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. The RAS is a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that filters out unnecessary information so the important stuff gets through.
Because there's just too much sensory data, right?
Right. Your brain processes millions of bits of sensory data every second. If you were consciously aware of all of it, you would go insane. So the RAS acts as a filter, and it filters reality based on your programmed beliefs.
Wait, so it's basically a subconscious confirmation bias machine.
Precisely. That is exactly what it is. If your internal software states that making money requires grueling misery, your RAS will literally edit your perception of reality to match that code.
That's incredible.
So if a joyful, easy opportunity to create wealth is presented to you, your RAS will filter it out. You won't even see it. Or if you do see it, your brain will flag it as a scam or as too good to be true.
Because it doesn't align with the internal programming that says life must be hard.
Right. And conversely, you will actively seek out toxic workplaces, demanding bosses, and overly complicated projects, because that struggle validates your internal software. Your brain prefers to be miserable and right, rather than happy and wrong about its foundational beliefs.
Wow. Which really explains a paradox that completely paralyzes millions of people, the fear of success. I mean, it sounds so counterintuitive on the surface. Why would anyone fear the exact thing they claim to be working toward? Why do people stay in jobs they absolutely despise, enduring a soul-crushing commute and a lack of fulfillment for a decade?
Because it is rarely a lack of ambition. It is due to a corrupted code masquerading as safety. The nervous system is designed to keep you alive, not to make you happy.
It just wants you breathing tomorrow.
Exactly. It prefers a predictable negative over an unpredictable positive. A miserable job is a known variable. Success, visibility, and wealth are unknown variables. To the primitive brain, the unknown is synonymous with danger. So people stay small out of the fear of the unknown, the fear of judgment, and the fear of failure.
They just spend their whole lives running away from the things they don't want, like running from the unpaid bills, running from poverty.
But running from fear is a deeply dangerous game for your nervous system. Let's visualize this dynamically.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Imagine you are in a vast, open landscape. The sun is setting directly behind you, casting long shadows. You are sprinting. You are running away from the specter of poverty, the fear of failure, the crushing anxiety of not having enough.
I can feel the adrenaline just picturing it, like lungs burning, legs heavy.
Yes, your sympathetic nervous system is in full overdrive. Cortisol and adrenaline are flooding your bloodstream. But as you run, the sun behind you casts your own shadow forward.
Okay, I see it.
This is your fear shadow. And the faster you run, the more you try to escape it, the larger and more distorted the shadow grows. It stretches out miles ahead of you, dark and terrifying. You are exhausting all of your life force just trying to outpace a projection.
So what is the biological hack here? Like, what happens if you just stop?
Imagine planting your feet firmly on the ground. Your breathing slows, you gather your courage, you pivot, and you turn around. You look directly into the sun, facing the very thing you have spent your adult life running from. You look the fear of failure directly in the eye.
And by turning to face the light, the shadow immediately falls behind you. It shrinks.
Exactly. When you refuse to run, you strip the fear of its power over your amygdala.
The threat detection center.
Yes, the amygdala is the brain's threat detection center. When you turn and face the fear, whether that is looking honestly at your bank account or finally acknowledging that you hate your career, you engage the prefrontal cortex.
The bouncer comes back online.
The logic center comes online, assesses the threat, and realizes there is no actual predator chasing you. The catastrophe you were running from was largely a projection of your own corrupted software.
And once you stop running from poverty, you can actually start walking toward purpose. But that requires a massive paradigm shift in how we view work, right?
It requires completely uninstalling the industrial age conditioning. The old code says, I trade 30 days of my misery and my time for a single paycheck. That is a limited, scarce, zero-sum way to view human potential.
So what's the new code?
The new code, the rewritten software, is based on the concept of unlimited value creation.
Let's define that. What does value creation actually look like in practice for someone listening?
Well, every single human being possesses a unique configuration of natural inclinations, talents, and perspectives. When you align your daily actions with those natural talents, cognitive friction drops heavily.
It stops feeling like pulling teeth.
Exactly. When you focus entirely on how your specific talents can create genuine value for others, whether that is by writing an elegant piece of software, baking an incredible loaf of bread, organizing chaotic data into clear systems, or offering profound empathy to a client, the nature of work transforms neurologically.
It stops feeling like a heavy burden. It ceases to be a transaction where you are just bleeding out your life force for basic survival.
Because you are operating in alignment with your innate potential. When you solve problems for others naturally, abundance and wealth are no longer things you have to forcefully chase. They become the natural, inevitable byproduct of the value you're emitting. You shift from a state of contraction to a state of expansion.
Okay, so we see how this sabotage plays out in our careers and our bank accounts. We actively push away opportunities because our struggle code flags ease as a threat. But as we transition to the next sector of the hard drive, I think the most devastating place this glitch occurs isn't at the office.
No, it's not.
It's in our own homes, it's happening with our partners or spouses or kids. So let's look at the architecture of love.
This is perhaps the most sensitive and profoundly corrupted sector of the human operating system. And it connects deeply to what psychological frameworks often refer to as the mother wound.
We spend so much time culturally analyzing how we express love. Like, we read books on visual love, auditory love, physical touch, acts of service. We spend endless hours trying to decipher our partner's communication style. But the research points to a much darker truth, doesn't it? Miscommunication isn't the real glitch.
Not at all. Miscommunication is a symptom. The actual root problem, the fatal error that causes the relationship system to crash repeatedly, is the inability to receive love.
That is heavy. Explain the mechanics of that.
You can have a partner who is completely devoted to you. They shower you with affection. They speak your exact language of love. They offer you unwavering loyalty. But if your internal software is coded to believe that you are fundamentally unworthy, or that love is inherently dangerous.
Which goes back to the childhood programming.
Yes. If that code is there, all of their efforts will bounce off your psyche like water off a glass window. The software literally rejects the incoming data.
Let's test this in real time. Earlier, I asked everyone to say, being loved is safe, and pay attention to their stomach. You have a deeper somatic lie detector test we can run right now. Walk us through it.
If you are listening to this in a safe place, I encourage you to participate fully. Close your eyes. Take a slow, deep breath in through your nose, expanding your diaphragm, and exhale completely, letting your shoulders drop.
Nice and relaxed.
I am going to ask you to say 4 statements out loud to yourself. Do not just think them. You must let the sound of your own voice vibrate in your chest. And as you speak, turn your attention inward. I want you to act as an observer of your own biology.
We are listening for the immediate reaction of the physical body.
Yes, say this aloud. I am worthy of love.
Notice what happens in your chest.
Now say, I deserve love.
Listen to the subtle shifts in your physiology. Are you holding your breath right now?
Say, being loved is easy.
And finally, the ultimate test.
Say, being loved is safe.
What did your body just do? Let's break down the physical reactions people might be having right now. Why would someone's stomach suddenly clench? Why would their throat tighten? Or a hot wave of panic wash over them?
What you're experiencing is the activation of the autonomic nervous system, specifically the sympathetic fight-or-flight response. Your stomach clenches because blood is literally being diverted away from your digestive organs and pushed into your extremities, preparing you to fight or run away.
That's wild. Over a
Over a
sentence.
sentence, your throat tightens because your vocal cords are constricting in a stress response.
So the body is treating the concept of safe love as a literal physical threat.
Exactly. Your body holds the ultimate truth of your programming. You can consciously desire love all you want, but if your subconscious mind does not fundamentally believe that love is safe, it will operate as an active defense mechanism.
How does that play out in a relationship, though?
It creates a pattern of active sabotage. When someone truly loves you, your corrupted code flags their affection as an error in the system. Your brain will start generating narratives to protect you.
Like what?
It will tell you they're being too clingy. It will convince you that their affection is fake or that they have a hidden agenda. It will force you to pick a fight, to create distance, to push them away so you can return to the familiar, comfortable baseline of isolation.
Because to the corrupted software, isolation equals safety. Intimacy equals danger. If we trace the wiring back to the motherboard, where does the specific block originate? Why would the brain associate love with danger?
A block in receiving love almost inevitably traces back to a disruption of the early maternal bond. In the symbolic and psychological language of the psyche, the mother figure represents life itself.
She is the source.
Yes, she represents the archetype of receiving, of nurturing, of open abundance. The primary caregiver is the infant's entire world.
And if that early experience was compromised, like what happens then?
If your earliest experiences with that primary feminine energy were fraught with inconsistency, emotional unavailability, or highly conditional affection, your system adapted.
It had to survive.
Right. If you learned that you only received a scrap of warmth when you were perfectly quiet or perfectly obedient, or when you met a specific condition, your developing brain learned the devastating lesson. It learned that love is a transaction.
Oof, that's a rough lesson.
It learned that love is a volatile resource that can be withdrawn at any moment, and therefore it is dangerous to ever fully relax into it.
So the defense mechanism is basically, I will never fully receive your love because then it won't destroy me when you inevitably take it away.
Precisely. It is an armor built to protect the fragile inner child. But as an adult, that armor becomes a prison.
So how do we dismantle the armor? I mean, do I just stand in front of a mirror and yell positive affirmations at myself until the code changes?
If only it were that easy. Positive affirmations are great, but if they contradict a deeply held somatic belief, your brain will just reject them as a lie.
So what actually works?
Healing the mother wound and rebuilding the capacity to truly receive love requires a biological process we can metaphorically call the art of steeping.
Like steeping tea.
Exactly. Think of a cup of hot water. If you drop a tea bag into it and immediately yank it out, you have nothing but slightly discolored water. For the water to fundamentally transform, for the essence of the tea to permeate the liquid, it must steep. It requires time, heat, and stillness.
How does that apply to emotional processing? Like, what does steeping look like on a random Tuesday evening when a listener is feeling a wave of intense loneliness or an urge to push their partner away?
Emotions are, at their core, biochemical events. Candace Pert, a pioneer in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, demonstrated that emotions are essentially neuropeptides flooding the system. From a biological standpoint, an emotion is a wave that lasts roughly 90 seconds.
Wait, only 90 seconds?
Just 90 seconds. If you simply allow the physical sensation to occur without resisting it, the chemical flushes through your system and dissipates.
But we don't do that. We resist it.
We resist it fiercely. We distract ourselves, we scroll on our phones, we pour a drink, we get angry. When you resist the emotion, you trap the chemical signature in your tissues. So, the art of steeping is the practice of sitting with the uncomfortable realization.
Just being with it.
Yes, when you do the somatic test and your body rejects love, you do not force it, you do not yell at yourself for being broken.
You just let it brew.
You sit with the painful reality. You allow yourself to feel the grief of the unconditional love you did not receive as a child. You allow the anger, the profound sadness, the physical sensation of emptiness to crest and fall within your nervous system.
That sounds incredibly hard to do.
It is uncomfortable, yes.
Yeah.
But you sit in the stillness of your own awareness, acting as the compassionate observer of your pain. And slowly, as you steep in these unprocessed emotions, the neural pathways begin to rewire. You stop fearing the pain, which clears the blockages and makes space for genuine receptivity.
This deep connection between our unexpressed emotions and our physical sensations brings us to another incredibly profound insight. You mentioned trapping the chemical signature in our tissues. Let's explore how the body keeps the score and how unresolved software errors literally manifest as chronic physical
This
symptoms.
is where Western medicine is finally starting to catch up to somatic psychology. We're not a brain driving around a meat suit.
A meat suit, I love that.
Well, it's true. The mind and the body are one continuous bidirectional feedback loop. Every thought, every repressed emotion, every denied trauma carries an energetic weight. And if a psychological trauma is not processed through the mind, the brain will literally download it into the physical tissue of the body for storage.
So the body becomes a silent communicator. It is constantly sending us error reports, but we just take painkillers to mute the alarm instead of reading the diagnostic log.
Exactly. And the mapping of where we store this trauma is fascinating. Somatic psychology has identified distinct patterns in how the nervous system compartmentalizes unresolved issues. For instance, consider the divide between the left and right sides of the body.
Is there actual science behind this, or is it purely symbolic? Like, why would the left side be different from the right?
It is rooted in how the brain's hemispheres process information, which crosses over to control the opposite sides of the body. Unexplained, chronic pain or tension heavily localized on the left side of the body frequently correlates with the maternal line, with feminine figures, and with the heavy anchor of past, unresolved grief.
Real, because of the brain hemispheres crossing.
Yes, the right hemisphere of the brain, which controls the left side of the body, is deeply involved in emotional processing, intuition, and memory recall. So the left side of the physical body often becomes the storage unit for the grief of what has already happened.
And the right side.
The left hemisphere of the brain controlling the right side of the body is more analytical, linear, and forward-thinking. Consequently, the right side of the physical body is often connected to the paternal line, to masculine figures, and to intense, gripping anxieties regarding the future.
Okay, so if a listener is constantly plagued by chronic right shoulder tension, or maybe like right side sciatic pain that no doctor can find a structural reason for, what is their body trying to tell them?
It may be the physical manifestation of carrying the terror of what is to come. It is the somatic expression of a lack of trust in their ability to step into the unknown. The muscles are literally armoring themselves against an anticipated future blow.
That concept of muscle armoring is fascinating. Let's look at some other specific physical metaphors. What about headaches? Have you ever experienced that relentless, crushing pressure in your head? Like not a sharp migraine, but a deep, heavy sensation, as if your skull is caught in a vice grip.
Yes, the tension headache. Often, this is not purely physiological. It is the physical manifestation of a massive internal conflict. It happens when you use sheer, brute force logic to suppress heavy emotional trauma.
Like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Precisely. The mind acts as a dam, desperately trying to hold back a flood of grief or anger with a rigid wall of rationalization. You tell yourself, it's fine, it makes logical sense why they left, I shouldn't be upset. The pressure you feel in your skull is the literal, energetic collision of the rising emotion hitting the resistance of the intellect.
Wow. And what about the lower body? Because I know people who suffer from chronic unexplained pain in their legs or their feet.
Well, in the language of the nervous system, our legs are our foundation. They are the mechanism that carries us forward into the world. If you're experiencing profound pain in your legs, it often points to a deep, subconscious psychological terror of moving forward in your life.
Because taking a step forward means leaving the comfort zone.
Exactly. It is the physical representation of the desire to remain planted in the familiar. Even if the familiar is deeply painful or toxic, the primitive brain prefers it over stepping forward into the unpredictable, unknown future. The tension in the leg muscles, often the psoas or the calves, is the physical act of hitting the brakes.
So when we find ourselves trapped in these physical manifestations, or when our mind is spiraling uncontrollably, ruminating on the regrets of the left side past or paralyzed by the terrors of the right side future, we need a circuit breaker. If I am sitting at my desk and I feel that vice grip in my head or that panic in my chest, what is the immediate administrative tool I can use to halt the corrupted code?
You need a way to immediately override the amygdala and force the prefrontal cortex back online. This is where the five senses grounding technique becomes essential. It is a highly practical, immediate method to disperse the fog of mental time travel.
Walk us through the exact neurobiology of this. Like, why does it work?
When a trauma response or intense anxiety hits, you are no longer in the present moment. Your brain is playing a movie about a past that is gone or projecting a catastrophe about a future that hasn't happened.
You're completely disconnected from the present.
Right. The amygdala is firing wildly, and the prefrontal cortex, which understands time and context, goes dark.
Hmm.
You cannot fight the anxious thoughts with more thoughts.
Because fighting the thoughts just tells the brain that the threat is real, giving it more energy.
Exactly. Instead, you forcibly anchor your awareness into immediate, undeniable physical sensory data. Here's the actionable step.
Right.
Stop whatever you are doing. Look at a clock. You must state the exact time out loud. State the date. State your exact location.
Like, it is 2:14 p.m. on Thursday, October 12th. I am standing in my kitchen.
Yes. By speaking specific numbers and locations out loud, you force the logical left hemisphere to reboot. Then, you relentlessly use your five senses to describe the physical reality around you out loud. I see the sunlight reflecting off the stainless steel refrigerator. I feel the smooth, cool surface of the granite countertop under my palms. I hear the low hum of the air conditioner. I see the green leaves of the plant on the windowsill. I feel the weight of my shoes on the tile floor.
It sounds so mundane, but what is happening chemically while you do this?
You are flooding the nervous system with real-time, non-threatening data. Because anxiety exists almost entirely in the realm of imagination, processing highly specific sensory data snaps the neural pathways back to present reality.
Ah, I see.
The prefrontal cortex realizes, I'm looking at a plant, I am touching a cold counter, there's no predator here. It sends an inhibitory signal down to the amygdala, shutting off the cortisol drip. You short-circuit the time travel. You remind the biological computer that right here, right now, in this exact second, you are entirely safe.
And true life, true action, and true peace only ever exist in the present moment anyway.
Precisely. And as we ground ourselves back in the present, we can finally begin to objectively look at our daily actions. Our behaviors are the ultimate symptoms of our internal software. Let's transition into examining some of the most common behavioral glitches, the ways our shadow selves operate in the daylight.
Let's start with a big one, procrastination. Culturally, we are deeply conditioned to view procrastination as a moral failing. Like, if you procrastinate, you are lazy, you lack drive, you have a personal defect. But the psychological data provides a much more compassionate and, frankly, more accurate analysis, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Procrastination has absolutely nothing to do with time management and everything to do with emotional regulation.
Wait, emotional regulation?
Yes, procrastination is not laziness. It is a highly effective subconscious defense mechanism designed to keep you safely inside your comfort zone.
Explain that. How is putting off a report until midnight a defense mechanism?
Well, when you delay writing that proposal, when you put off having a difficult conversation with your spouse, or when you delay launching your business, your brain is actively protecting you from perceived danger. The danger might be the sting of rejection. It might be the vulnerability of being seen and judged. It might even be the overwhelming responsibility that comes with success.
So the brain does a rapid calculation.
Yes. The brain calculates that the temporary discomfort of delaying the task, the low-level guilt of procrastination, is far safer than the existential threat of actually completing the task and facing the unknown outcome. It is a brilliant, albeit destructive survival strategy.
So the cure for this trap isn't downloading another productivity app or flogging yourself with guilt. The cure is shining the light of logic directly onto the fear.
Exactly. When you find yourself paralyzed by procrastination, you have to run a diagnostic on the fear. Sit down and ask yourself two questions. First, what is the absolute best thing that could happen if I take this action? Let your mind explore the positive neurochemistry of the best-case scenario. Then ask the critical question. What is the absolute worst thing that could happen if I take this action?
Yeah, we have to be incredibly specific here, right? Don't just say, it will be bad. Write it down.
Yes, write it down to drag it out of the shadows. Usually the worst-case scenario is remarkably survivable. The absolute worst thing is an awkward conversation. It is a rejected application. It is someone saying no. It is rarely the life-ending catastrophe your amygdala was warning you about.
Once the fear is contextualized, how do we actually move forward? Because motivation is notoriously unreliable.
You must shift your operational strategy. You have to stop relying on motivation. Motivation is an emotion, it is fleeting, it is dependent on dopamine spikes, and it is highly vulnerable to a bad night's sleep or a cloudy day. You cannot build a stable life on motivation. You build a life on discipline.
Discipline is the administrative override.
Exactly. Discipline is the ability to say to your brain, I hear you. I acknowledge that you are afraid. I acknowledge that you want to stay in the comfort zone, but we are taking a step forward anyway. Discipline is the act of doing the work regardless of the emotional weather. It is how you forge new neural pathways through sheer repetition.
Let's look at another massive behavioral symptom of corrupted early coding, the failure of personal boundaries. We all know people, perhaps many of our listeners are one of them, who physically cannot say the word no. They overcommit, they exhaust themselves serving others, they tolerate deeply disrespectful behavior, and they swallow their own needs until they are completely hollow.
This is a trauma response known as fawning. It is the lesser-known cousin of fight, flight, or freeze. Fawning is seeking safety by merging with the desires of the threat. You appease the other person so they won't attack or abandon you.
Where does this boundary failure originate? Because it rarely starts in adulthood.
If we trace the code back, we almost always find a childhood where the child's physical space, emotional expression, or literal voice was constantly interrupted or aggressively overridden. Imagine a child quietly playing in their room, and an adult constantly bursts in without knocking, demands immediate attention, or forces them to hug a relative when they don't want to, or forces them to eat when their body says it's full.
It seems minor to an adult, but what is the developing brain learning?
The child is learning a devastating lesson about sovereignty. They learn that their personal borders are meaningless. They learn that the emotional needs of others will always forcefully supersede their own physical reality. The software is written, my boundaries do not matter, therefore I do not matter. The only way to receive love and stay safe is to be endlessly accommodating.
So how do you heal a glitch that deep? How do you learn to say no when your nervous system thinks saying no means you will be abandoned and die?
You have to reframe the act of refusal. To heal this, one must recognize that saying no to an unreasonable demand is not an act of hostility toward the other person. It is an act of profound loyalty to oneself. Rebuilding boundaries requires tolerating the immense discomfort of disappointing others. It is the slow, deliberate, brick-by-brick process of rebuilding the fences around your own psychological property.
And speaking of family dynamics, there is a specific, highly destructive behavioral pattern that silently ruins lives, and it ties directly into this idea of boundary failure, the role reversal of parenting your own parents.
This is a systemic error in the family structure, often called parentification. There is a natural, chronological, and energetic flow to human existence. Life force, resources, and emotional stability are meant to flow from the older generation down to the younger generation.
That's the ideal design.
Right. Parents are meant to be the solid container. Children are meant to receive that stability, grow, and then pass their energy forward to their own children or to their broader contributions to the world.
But what happens when the parent isn't a solid container? What happens if the parent is emotionally immature, struggling with addiction, or simply overwhelmed by life?
The child, sensing the instability of the system, steps up to fill the void. The child is forced to become the caretaker, the therapist, or the emotional anchor for their own parent. When this happens, the natural flow of life is violently reversed. The child is pouring their life force backward, upstream.
What is the long-term neurological and psychological cost of that?
It creates massive, dense blockages in the child's subconscious. A child's brain is not equipped to process adult anxieties. If you spend your life energy parenting your parents, you have no energetic reserves left to build your own future. You become eternally tethered to the past, trapped in a dynamic that you can never actually fix, because the parent-child relationship cannot function in reverse. A child cannot heal a parent.
So the code must be corrected. You have to establish an internal boundary.
You must internally declare, I am the child. You are the parent. This does not mean you have to cruelly abandon them or cut them off, but it means fundamentally releasing the emotional responsibility for their internal well-being. It means allowing the natural flow of your life force to turn forward toward your own destiny, your own relationships, and your own purpose.
This brings us to the final and perhaps the most uncomfortable behavioral glitch we need to debug. As we examine our behaviors, we have to confront the people who drive us the absolute craziest. Let's explore a fascinating psychological tool known as the mirror exercise.
We all have people in our lives who trigger immense, disproportionate emotional responses in us. A colleague who is overwhelmingly arrogant, a sibling who is deeply, chronically selfish, a friend who is endlessly dramatic. We look at them and feel a surge of intense judgment, irritation, and superiority.
It is so easy to point the finger and say, they are the problem. My life would be great if they would just fix their glaring personality flaws.
But psychological frameworks, particularly those dealing with the concept of the shadow self, suggest a deeply humbling reality. The external world is not a separate entity. It is a mirror of our internal software. The things that trigger us most intensely in others are invariably the exact things we have repressed within ourselves.
Walk us through the mirror exercise. How do we actually use this to debug our code?
Try this exercise later today. Think of someone close to you who triggers a very strong emotional response. Write down 5 of their positive traits, things you genuinely admire. Then write down 5 of their negative traits, the specific behaviors that make your blood boil.
And what is the grand reveal when we look at that piece of paper?
The traits that you have written down are not just objective observations about them. They are an exact diagnostic readout of your own unresolved software codes. This is the mechanism of psychological projection.
So the positive traits.
The positive traits you admire and recognize in them. Perhaps their bold creativity, their unwavering boundary setting, their unapologetic ambition. Those are not things you lack. You cannot recognize a trait in another unless you possess the blueprint for it within yourself. Those positive traits are your own latent potentials. They are the programs within your own software that are waiting for permission to execute. You recognize the light in them because it exists within you.
And the negative traits, the arrogance, the selfishness, this is where people are going to push back. Like, I am not arrogant. That's why I hate their arrogance.
That is precisely the defense mechanism of the ego. The negative traits are where the real, profound work lies. We are only deeply irrationally triggered by behaviors in others that correspond to the shadows we refuse to acknowledge in our own behavior. If someone's arrogance infuriates you to your core, you must ask yourself, where in my life am I secretly arrogant and judging others? Or, conversely, where am I suppressing my own rightful pride and projecting my bitter resentment onto them because they allow themselves to be proud?
Wow. It is a radical taking of responsibility.
It is the ultimate administrative override. When you realize that every annoying person, every deeply frustrating encounter is actually a highly specific, personalized diagnostic report showing you exactly where your own software needs debugging, the entire world transforms.
You stop being a passive victim of other people's behavior.
You become a master student of your own mind. You reclaim the projected energy. The biological computer is immensely, terrifyingly powerful. The hardware is a miracle of nature. But the software is entirely in your hands. You do not have to run the corrupted codes of your childhood forever. You can turn and face the fear shadow. You can steep in the discomfort of healing. You can ground yourself in the sensory reality of the present moment. And you can reclaim the borders of your own life. The keyboard is yours.
Okay, let's just unpack the magnitude of the journey we've just been on. This deep dive has laid out a profound mapping of the human operating system. But what our guide has illuminated so beautifully is the ultimate empowering truth of human biology. We are not prisoners of our past.
No, we are definitely not.
Yeah. Yes, the foundational codes were written when we were infants, way too young to have a say. And yes, those corrupted files, the deep-seated unworthiness, the fear of success, the terrifying blocks against receiving love, they've been silently running the show for years. But the defining characteristic of human consciousness, backed by the hard science of neuroplasticity, is that we can change. We have the administrative rights to our own mental software. We have the password to get into the terminal.
All right there waiting for us.
Exactly. This entire exploration connects back to a single vital realization for you, the listener. Every complaint you have about the outside world, whether it is a frustrating partner who cannot seem to connect with you, a stagnant career that feels like walking through molasses, or even that chronic, unexplainable physical ache on the left side of your body. None of these are random punishments from the universe. They are invitations. They are error messages flashing on your internal screen, begging you to look inward and debug your own code. When you stop trying to forcefully control the external world and start actively rewriting your internal scripts, literally everything changes.
It's a complete paradigm shift.
It is. And I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. It is a tiny practical test of your newly updated software. The next time someone offers you a genuine compliment, whether a colleague says you did a brilliant job on a project or a friend simply tells you that you look vibrant today, I want you to observe yourself. Notice your immediate impulse. Notice the overwhelming urge to deflect it. Notice the urge to explain it away, to point out a flaw, to say, oh, I just threw this together, or it wasn't a big deal, anyone could have done it.
We all do it.
We do. But then I want you to hit the override button. Stop the program. What would happen if you simply looked them in the eye, said the words thank you, and actually allowed your nervous system to believe it? What would happen if you let the code of worthiness run completely uninterrupted for just one 90-second moment? Try it. See what happens to the system. Thank you for joining us on this deep and fascinating exploration of the mind. Stay curious, keep examining your code, and until next time, keep upgrading the most important technology you will ever own.